Welcome to Mystical Messages. I am Hilary Harley, your podcast host. I am a soul guide and astrologer. Mystical Messages is your podcast gateway to discover and learn about the realm beyond the veil, including all things intuitive, metaphysical, and the healing arts. To learn more about my work or to book a session with me, please visit hilaryharley.com. If you would like to read my monthly forecast, you may find the full written transcript for all astrology episodes on my website. That way, if you hear something and want to re-listen to a forecast or to check a date of a cosmic event, you may find it on the written monthly forecast on hilaryharley.com. Today, I am so delighted to welcome my very special guest, Katherine Ebacher of listentothebodytalk.com, to help me understand more about listening to the body talk. Welcome. Thank you, Katherine, so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Wonderful.
How long have you been practicing? Before we dive in to what body talk is, how long have you been practicing this?
I have been practicing 20 years, since 2002.
Wow. Okay. That's really impressive. 20, a little over 20 years, 22 years. And first of all, what is listen to the body talk?
Listen to the body talk is we use this word modality, but I'm just going to say it's a method of using structured intuition to listen to someone else's body through muscle checking. And we use muscle checking to evaluate how the body needs to better communicate with different body parts, how physiology is working within the body, or how the anatomy needs to be shifted in some way, or the psychology of the
Uh,
body needs to shift in some magical sort of way by allowing a liver to talk to a gallbladder and not being pissed off with each other while they're battling out some argument within themselves.
so it's muscle testing, muscle checking. And so how does a client come to you? How do they initially present?
Initially, a client has some sort of ailment, pain, back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, that sort of thing. Or they're coming in with an emotional challenge. I often get a lot of clients who are uh, either anxiety seems to be most common, because by the time you're depressed, it's difficult to even look for solutions. But someone
Right.
coming slightly out of depression in that dysthymia sort of stage may come as well. So I see a lot of clients with physical pain and emotional pain. And
Mm-hmm.
then the third category is someone that wants to evolve spiritually.
Um,
And body talk, in many ways, is a spiritual pathway that has the byproduct of making you healthy.
so talk to me about the path forward once you identify. I mean, they come to you, say, with shoulder pain or some sort of chronic condition like an autoimmune. How you muscle test them, and what does I mean, without maybe getting into too much technical language, how do you identify the way forward and the way out?
Typically, there's a story involved with a physical pain, or with an ailment of some sort. There's typically some sort of trigger event. Maybe it's in the past, or maybe it's in their past, or maybe it's like in utero that
uh
somehow plays out. I can think of, different examples that where someone in utero was dealing with father's fear. And that was affecting a little brain part called the amygdala. And the amygdala is our fight flight mechanism, right? So in utero, having this fight or flight response, and she gets the session, and we figure out it's dad's fear, and we unravel that story. And she goes and asks Mom, what was happening during the pregnancy with me?
Hmm.
And she related to dad, and she says, "Oh, your father had survived an incident, and he was nightmaring all through the
Wow.
pregnancy."
Wow.
Right? So dad's scared, mom's scared, baby's scared.
Hmm.
And that set up post-traumatic stress in later life that thought it was one trigger event in her lifetime, but turns out it was this, you know, predisposition for post-traumatic stress early in her development.
Wow. Wow. And so it's literally by muscle testing and identifying. And then how do you release? Is it just simply by talk therapy?
Yeah, it's not solely talk. There's tapping involved with the three brains of our body. We have a head brain that we typically talk about and would be some of what we focus on when we're doing like EFT, where you've heard tapping
Hmm.
involved in meridian activation with emotional freedom technique,
Hmm.
EFT. But this is more involved where you're actually tapping into three brains, the head brain, the heart brain, and the gut brain, and getting all three of them working in alignment to go and address the issue that is at hand. So, in the case of that fear and the predisposition to response, um, to post-traumatic stress, literally I saw the formation and the breakdown of like neurons.
Wow.
Like as we tap into the head brain and the heart brain gets involved, it can literally create new neurotransmitter pathways that are healthy.
Wow.
Not
Wow.
just seeing the pathology, that's one thing, that's the trigger, but you have to change your internal physiology. And in this case, it was changing the anatomy where new neurons were, or new pathways were being used to create habits of health.
Habits of health. Yeah, that's nine-tenths of the battle, isn't it? It's, identifying it, and then the work really comes in when we have to do the lifting of creating the new routines and practices.
Yes.
So many questions. First of all, I mean, I don't know which to ask first. How did you come into this? But also, how was this created by whom? And, how did this modality emerge? Because it's
Yes.
fascinating.
I can describe both of those in a fairly simple story. I found Body Talk because I wandered into my favorite bookstore in Chicago. It's called Transitions Bookstore. And I wander in, and there's this huge crowd in the cafe. And there's this woman up at the front of the room tapping on her head and her heart and her belly. And I'm like, what is going on here? This is nutso, right? So I sit back at the back of the room, and the instructor turns out was saying, "Is anyone having any difficulty breathing or sleeping?" Well, I had just been with cats and was having asthma, so I'm like jumping up to the front of the room. She could pick
Wow.
nobody else. It was only me. And and so she does this treatment on me
Hmm.
to activate this healthy breathing. And it was odd, but you stick your hand on the roof of your mouth and she holds the pituitary between your eyes, and all of a sudden I could breathe.
Wow.
And literally, I made the decision right then and there. I'm canceling work for 2 days and working through a 4 day class, and I am going to learn how to do this. So Body Talk was literally transformed my life, but I
Hmm.
found it because of this, crazy little demonstration that I then give for other people, a demonstration in different audiences and back and forth. But Body Talk was created by Dr. John Veltheim. He was from Australia and he lived here in Sarasota, Florida. And he would come to Chicago and teach courses.
Wow.
So there were 9 levels of basic training. The first 4 days was that basic class that the woman had taught us right then, right as the first introduction. But all of my other training was directly with John Veltheim because he traveled to Chicago to teach these courses.
Oh, wow. So you learned from
So
the master and the
I learned
founder.
from the master, and the 9 levels turned into an advanced course that was taught some of in Rhinebeck, New York.
Hmm.
So I took a class there to learn the advanced work beyond even where John was, developing new modality pathways or more structure to help with the healing nature within us. And he was a acupuncturist, dean of Chinese medicine. He had a structure that he put together to be able to understand what the body was saying. He put a structured map together that we call the protocol chart. And that's the tool that allows you to use intuition to
Hmm.
bounce around this chart. Is a priority an endocrine? Is it an organ? And
Hmm.
is it a body part? And you're able to understand by breaking down what he put in a structured map. And it's fascinating his sort of um, ability to structure something that's very complex. The body is very complex.
Right, right,
And there
right,
are lots of moving parts for it. There's chemistry involved in the gut and all those microbes that are floating around and have a particular environment. He gave structure for how to work with the microbiome in the gut or how to work with body chemistry and a toxin you may have been exposed to in painting your house, right? And getting that out of your system or some tainted food that you had that
right.
your liver's still dealing with, even though it's gone and out. It was a trauma to eat that. And the body's still responding to it. So he gave that structure to be able to get to those types of stories.
Wow. I mean, first of all, I just want to say my guest is Katherine Ebacher. She is the practitioner of listentothebodytalk.com. That is how you can reach her if this conversation is resonating with you. This it's just endlessly fascinating to me because I was taught, I'm sure a lot of people know that the body is the last line of defense when it's, spirit is trying to hit you over the head and you're not paying attention and finally like, okay, we don't have any more tools in our box, so we're going to, let your body really let you know it's time to pay attention.
Mhm.
And I find it fascinating too that he was or is trained in acupuncture, Chinese acupuncture, because that was formative in my healing and my journey. I had a blocked sinus and pituitary and pineal. I should say not pituitary, but pineal gland. And so through Chinese acupuncture, I, was cured and healed of chronic sinus infections. And that's
Mhm.
when I started my practice, healing practice in astrology and Reiki. So typically, how, uh, what kinds or do you have certain ailments that come to you more than others? Or is it a cross section, across the board, different um, ailments that people have when they come to see you?
typically it's something that they have gone to doctor after doctor and not gotten any answers as to what it is.
Hmm.
They just know that their skin is reacting and cortisone is not fixing it, right? Or they know that that knee pain hurts them only when they go up steps and not when they're walking day to day. And no one can explain why my knee, because it's not arthritic, right? And that may be situation where fear is also processed in the ability to step forward in life, right? There's the psychology of a knee, and doctors can't necessarily discover that an emotion is causing a physical ailment like a knee pain. So it typically starts with physical uh, ailments, pain, frustration, emotion, but
Hmm.
it turns into this journey of an exploration of their purpose in life. Or they get the ailment fixed and they want to figure out what they want to do now that the fear has gone. How do they want to take steps forward in their life to lose the weight or to uh, get more exercise or better nutrition and communicating with their body before a physical ailment shows up. So they're doing preventative work essentially
Right.
or extending that work. I often get the one and done because the knee pain is gone
And
in
that's
quick
good.
order. And I also get the lifers that have come for me for the last 10 years, right? On a regular basis, every month or 6 weeks, right? For their little tune up. And I get my sessions once a month, right?
So,
I get treated too.
so you go to somebody.
I do. I do it over Zoom
Hmm.
primarily because my practitioners are all around the world. And I organize a small group that trade with one another
Hmm.
so that everybody gets their monthly session within the small group. And we trade partners and this, that, and the other. It's a lovely way to make sure that I'm getting the tune up when something odd shows up, like an elbow pain that
Right.
only when I move, try to strike my hair does it hurt, but walking, no problem. Right? Those sorts of things are not just isolated to knees. They can be any
Right.
joint
Right.
or strange sort of thing that no one can figure out. And I try
Right.
to catch those right early so that I'm communicating with myself and my body before something becomes chronic
Right. Or acute. Right.
or
Right.
acute. Yeah.
That's very helpful to know that people are addressing things preventatively through this modality. So I'm trying to think in terms of the microbiome. That has become such a hot button topic right now. And I find it really fascinating. I mean, that the founder of Listen to the Body Talk was talking about the microbiome quite a while ago. In your experience, I mean, how much is it a third, a third, a third between the brain, the heart, and the microbiome? Or is it really disease dependent?
Yeah. So when we're tapping on the belly, we're tapping in to the environment of the microbiome, but we're actually talking to a brain. They're neurotransmitters
Hmm.
and neurons that are down in that belly, and they're talking about serotonin and dopamine and all of these feel good hormones that literally come from the nutrition that we're getting and the activation of uh, kidney working together. So we're tapping really into this neural network down here
Hmm.
in the gut brain when we're doing our tapping of the three brains. But the microbiome itself is fascinating in a way because we live with little microorganisms that live and take care of us.
Hmm.
Most of
Hmm.
them are healthy.
Right.
Every once in a while, we take an antibiotic and they turn from friends into frenemies, right? There's this little shift where the bacteria are gone, which are the ruling party of the microbiome, and the yeast begin to take over, and they're very opportunistic. And all of a sudden, you have sugar cravings all over the place because that's what they love to eat.
Hmm.
And you have
Hmm.
no idea why you're overeating the sugar. And meanwhile, it was the antibiotic that you had taken for 10 days prior to this all of a sudden craving for everything.
Interesting.
And I love this story. It was actually my mother who deals with bipolar disorder, but she had, I had gone to her one afternoon and said, Mom, hey, how about, you seem a little down and we haven't done anything in a week or so. How about we go to the nail salon tomorrow? And she says, Katherine, I can't go to the nail salon. I cannot pick out a color. They're going to get clippings in my eyes, and there is no way I want to go. Okay. And I said, okay, mom. Went home. I said, can I do a body talk session on you? Because I think something else is going on here. And she said, whatever you want to do. And so I go home and find out that the microbiome has been affected. And it's the reason why is I call the nurse because I see that an
Hmm.
antibiotic has come into her system. Oh, yeah,
Uh,
we ordered through, she lives at a retirement home. Yeah, we ordered an antibiotic. She's been taking it for 10 days. She just finished. And I said, Mom's chemistry has been affected. The way we treated it was fascinating. So, what I did was the microbes, I mean, the bacteria were gone, right? So, she's going into a downspin of depression. And I went to the appendix. She had an appendix, fortunately. And it's a little storehouse of microbes, big
hmm.
storehouse microbes from the because they're tiny. Um, and I literally allowed Noah's Ark to bring the microbes back out of the appendix and back into her gut. I go to the retirement home the next day, and mom says, I picked out my color. I'm ready to go.
Wow. Wow.
I
Wow.
was
Wow.
so, and she even said, I was doing this at 11 o'clock at night.
Hmm.
And she said, Katherine, I also woke up with this great dream at like right at 11 o'clock. And I was like, that was
Um,
the thing. That was the thing that needed to shift.
that is incredible. Yeah, I mean, we're really learning. I mean, we've always had this phrase, you are what you eat and what you put into your body, whether it's an antibiotic or any kind of medicine. And that includes non-tangible, spiritual medicine, sound
Mhm.
healing, all of these modalities now that are available to us that are really connected to our psyche. But it is fast. That is a really helpful analogy, an anecdote about a shift that can be made through this. So, my guest is Katherine Ebacher. Listen to the bodytalk.com is her website. It's all one word. Listen to the bodytalk.com. Um, so, I mean, if have there been any particular cases that really stumped you or, you know, problem ailments that have been difficult to work through or anything that's shocked you about the this modality?
Yeah, I think, I talk about the one and done, but there are other ailments that takes longer.
Hmm.
There's more complexity than just one little consciousness definition around not wanting to step forward. And I'm thinking about a situation where someone had acid reflux.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That had a number of legs to it, and it took quite some time to work it out. Fortunately, it was one of my longer standing clients, and she held in there for us
Mm-hmm.
to find what it is that needed to be unraveled. Every session was making it a little bit better, but it took probably five or more sessions to
Mm-hmm.
fully resolve that. But every time there was something else that was in addition to that, right? It
Right.
was a back pain that showed up at the same time, or the digestion wasn't working fully through the colon and
Mm-hmm.
was affecting that stomach and sending up, the diaphragm massages the organs underneath. But if the colon is not releasing, it's putting pressure from the back end on the stomach, and then the
Uh,
stomach is sending acid reflux.
right.
Right? So
Right.
sometimes it's simply anatomy and not some sort of psychological story. It has to do with maybe you need a colon cleanse
Right.
to get out what's in the colon that's putting pressure on the stomach and then sending the acid up.
That's really interesting because the one and done concept, I mean, I want to talk about that versus the more prolonged client. Um, I, when I was in a certain acupuncture practice, in Boston, the one practitioner I went to was not charging the standard rate. And I remember asking her why. I'm like, this is expensive real estate. Like you have an office in downtown Boston and you're charging like 30% less than the other acupuncturists out there. What's going on? And she said, because I want people to stick with the protocol and to see it through versus somebody who can only afford one or two sessions or one session and just barely scratch the surface. So my hat is off to you for, being able to see the long term and the long distance goal of what is available, and also to the client to understand that this is not necessarily a quick fix. Because it's truly a collaborative process and a collaboration between patient and practitioner.
Absolutely. I call it teamwork, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the only one listening to their body.
Right.
They're getting insights throughout the session. The stomach may be rumbling, but an idea may come to them. I remember this story, it's just coming to mind. And sure enough, it is the story that's related, or it's just a random story, and we can muscle check through that and
Mm-hmm.
get to something that's more meaningful. But the aspect of one session versus multiple sessions can be that someone gets better right away.
Right.
It can
Right.
also be that they've run out of money.
Right. Right.
And then the third thing is always when I do one session, I ask, is it a priority to have a follow-up session? So we're
Mm-hmm.
muscle checking that into the body.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the session is finished, and so they don't have to follow up. And
Right.
many times it's, yes, a priority for a new session. How long? When is the new session? Is it
Wow.
one day, 1 week, 3 weeks? That sort of thing. And that one with post-traumatic stress, she had 3 sessions in a row, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day.
Wow. Wow.
She
Wow.
hadn't stuck with that. She needed the original cause to be cleared, the mechanism of the brain shifting from post-traumatic stress, so seeing a reframing of that and then creating the habits of health. So I always ask, what's a priority in terms of follow-up? And the client always has the choice
Mm-hmm.
what they
Mm-hmm.
want to do, But if they want true results, listening to their body and doing the homework that we sometimes get.
Right.
We also ask, we ask, is further body talk a priority? And we also ask, is there a homework assignment? And it can be something super simple, like go out and breathe with the trees
Right. Right.
because your oxygen levels and your diaphragm has shifted. We got emotion out of here. Go breathe and really breathe in. And it can be finger painting.
Oh, I love that.
It was a great little exercise. And she's like, you're not going to believe this, but I have finger paint in the basement. I had just organized and put it into a little container. And I said, let's bring it out. Her body knew it was there and she could utilize that. And the intuition came that, I got the intuition, I got the hit from her body, and she had the tools right there available for her. Because I'm sitting there going, maybe you can find a kid that he's like, I got some.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So, cellular memory is what we're talking about. I mean, this is really, I mean, it is amazing what a storehouse our cellular. My daughter is a dancer and she danced for many many years, and the muscle memory, tied into cellular memory. I mean, this is just really extraordinary. And I mean, you can certainly speak to this far more. I mean, I know the terminology, I know nothing about the science behind it, but can you talk to or speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So, a baseball player that gets injured, for instance, has some level of muscle memory, has some level of understanding about how to throw the ball, but now they had an injury and they have to reevaluate with the healing of that injury how to get that, baseball strike or yeah, that's
Pitch. Yeah.
the baseball pitch in the way that's going to be most helpful in their, or they literally are getting back their muscle memory for the throws that they could do and pitch uh, before the injury.
Mm-hmm.
So we have different ways of tapping into that health network that they already know. But it's also down at the cellular level, like you were
Mm-hmm.
describing, and down to the level of the DNA. Literally, the DNA has certain mechanisms that make it a liver cell or make it a heart cell, but it's the same DNA.
Right.
It just
Right.
has a different part of it open. So liver parts are open or heart parts are open on the structure that's literally the same in every single cell. And that's what they're calling epigenetics. It's
Okay.
little flags on top of the DNA that are like zippers that keep the liver parts open and the heart part open and the lung part open, these little zipper. But if you get a trauma, and the airbag hit your lungs,
Oh.
for instance, and the accident was not your fault, but you saw the car coming at you in a direct, you
Strike.
knew it
Right.
was going to
Right.
happen. So there's a whole scene of trauma there that locks down the DNA, and all of a sudden the lungs are not inflating fully. And
Wow.
it's from the trauma in addition to the airbag literally deflating the lungs. And we can go in there and pull back the ability for the lungs to breathe again.
So I'm also hearing not just short term, which is significant enough, short term trauma, things that happen in the last week, last year, last lifetime. But what about ancestral trauma? I mean, do you get into any of that? Things that have been carried over, or you're smiling? I
Absolutely.
mean, you're out.
Absolutely. The smile's there because it's something that we call eighth chakra.
Okay.
And eighth chakra goes into our own family history through the DNA.
Right.
We inherit these little flags that are on and off. So mom's trauma becomes our trauma. And it's not just learned behavior, it's literally in and on on the genes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we have family history, but we also have cultural sorts of history,
Mm-hmm.
right? It may be, we call it from the Mahat, as an expression, but what that basically means is the soup of all experiences that have not been resolved yet come into our essence in this lifetime, and we get the opportunity to resolve them. And oftentimes we don't
Right.
until we find something like Body Talk where we can uncover what does the soul need to clear in this lifetime, and we get a little snippet or a story of something that was unresolved in past experience, some sort of, depression, lost all their money, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
one particular person that jumped out of the top building and then regretted it on the way down. And so that's unresolved in that lifetime, but it comes into our soul essentially to resolve in this lifetime. It wasn't our story, it's not our past life, but
Mm-hmm.
it's essentially a snippet of a past life that needs to be resolved.
That is endlessly fascinating to me because I think the psychological profession is just scratching the surface of ancestral trauma. But the body certainly, through cellular memory, is certainly, speaking to us every day about what we carry.
I'm thinking of a particular story where lungs were involved, and this mother had come in to get her son who was uh, dealing with autism, right? And she was getting treated, and it turns out that what we uncovered was a grandfather through eighth chakra that had had coping mechanisms because he was a cigarette smoke shop. He didn't smoke, but he worked in a smoke shop.
Wow.
And so his coping mechanisms had been inherited by his her granddaughter, essentially my client's mother, and then into the son itself. So they had carried with them the coping mechanisms of not being able to smoke. And once we relieved the genetics that was locked down that made that, his manifestation of his challenges lifted on one level, and so did mom's.
Wow.
It
Wow.
was fascinating because as we heal through the generations, it goes backwards through the generations that are still living and heals them as well.
Yes. I mean, in some circles I'm connected to, healing circles, whenever there's healing work done, and you may know this, you're healing 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. So the undertaking that this is truly sacred and holy work cannot be underestimated or overestimated, rather.
Very true. And we call that a miasm when it
Amaya.
goes back 5 or 7 generations. And we literally, when we're doing a session, we go back through the pathway. Was it mom or dad? Right? What's
Mm-hmm.
a priority? Is it mom's mom? Further back, yes. Mom's dad, right? And we can literally find the ancestor that the original issue was created in
Wow.
through that pathway of just following the mom, dad, and dad's dad. And we're 5 generations back and healing something, not in the ancestor, but in the genetics that has carried forward into the
Right.
client.
Right.
Mhm.
Wow. So I also want to mention it is certainly not an accident that you walked into the bookstore in Chicago because I don't believe in coincidences. So you were clearly guided at that juncture to just happen into that bookstore at the time that you did.
Yes, and to even have an allergy because I wouldn't have had asthma had I not had the Christmas holiday with my parents who both had cats.
Right.
Like
Right.
I wouldn't have had something to bring me up to the front of the room and say, hey, this is real stuff. I
Right.
mean, I was a banker and was continuing to be a banker for 29 years,
So,
longer than I've been doing Body Talk. That, 22 years, I was a banker long before that. And recently, within 2022, at my 20-year mark, I decided to retire from banking
mhm.
and do listen to the Body Talk work full
Oh,
time.
wow. And wasn't your college major related to?
It was. I studied biology in undergrad and then went and got my master's degree in business. But that biology degree, I chose not to be a doctor for one reason, two
which,
reasons.
which
One
was?
was I couldn't remember the name of medications and
Uh,
I didn't spell very well. So if I messed up someone's medication, I could kill them, right? I
mhm.
mean, there is a lot of risk in that.
Right.
Whereas in Body Talk, I'm not having to spell anything. The body's talking to me, and I don't literally have to write down these things that have to be spelled correctly in order for the pharmacist to get them right. So I think my fear led me into banking, but my opportunity came back to me when I wandered into that bookstore, as you said.
I mean, I just find that fascinating because you either take the long road or the circuitous route or or some people are on a less circuitous route, and but there's always a reason, and the detours that we take often, well, not even often, always inform our journey. So this is just endlessly fascinating. I could talk to you all day. My guest is Katherine Ebacher. Her website is listentothebodytalk.com, all one word, listentothebodytalk.com. Um, what do you consider your most favorite part of your job?
Oh, connecting with people and listening to their intake when they come in the door, and then listening to their body when we uncover a story. I call myself a curious listener,
Hmm.
storyteller, and healer, right? It's got those three components to it. And the curiosity is one of my definitions of love. It's got two, space and curiosity. And what I mean by that is the space for someone to talk,
Hmm.
tell what's going on with them today, kind of thing. And that may be short-winded or long-winded as they do that. And then lay down on the couch here and get a session where we listening to not only what their brain thinks the problem is, but what their body says the issue is, and then resolving that.
Right. Yeah, the
And we need
resolution.
that space for them to talk and then the curiosity to come in. And so I literally love my clients because I'm taking those actions, I'm giving space and the curiosity to come together. And I see that as the left and right brain structure of love.
Right. Right. No, that's so well stated. Um, and I was going to say something and I completely spaced on it. Um, but that is beautiful, just giving the opportunity to afford, oh, it was Zoom. The Zoom meetings that you have as well. These do not, the body talk sessions do not have to be in person.
That's correct.
Okay. Because that really opens up. I mean, I certainly have experience with that in my own practice myself because I was prior to COVID, I was only seeing people in person. And I mean, very rarely did I have a phone call. I mean, Zoom, what is that? It's like, oh yeah, some people do Zoom. And then during COVID, everybody, that's all I did. It became exclusively via Zoom. So, it's
Yeah.
wonderful because it really opens up a global audience for you.
It does. And I have clients in Hong Kong. I have clients in Italy and Singapore and Canada, as well as the United States, all over the United States. And then a big group of people here in Cincinnati, Ohio, that choose to do it locally, right? So I have that full breadth. And Zoom really does offer the same exact curiosity and space because someone can talk, but I can talk to their body via the airwaves, and their healing
Right, right,
is
right.
happening because their body's doing the work.
Yeah,
We're
it's
not
really,
channeling energy here. Their body, as they tap into those three brains, it's doing all the healing.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, that really speaks to the connection, the face to face. It doesn't have to be in the same room in the same geographical location. It's just the face to face.
It's helpful. Yeah.
Um, so we're at the end of our time. Hard to believe, but not a surprise because it's so easy to talk to you. And it's such a rich topic. Are there any special books, resources, tools, classes, teachers that you would suggest for somebody who is really sparked by this modality or curious?
Yeah. Two things I want to mention. And one is uh, mind body maps is something I'm developing. That's a tool that I use for my body talk sessions. And I intend to bring it out to communities like the Gene Key community that is interested in studying from a gene perspective, and then the contemplative perspective, and then the body talk community that want to use it for their healing journey with clients, and then someone who's just curious. So mind body maps is one thing, but I did want to say that bodytalksystem.com, bodytalksystem.com is where classes can be taken to, and that's John Veltime's original system. That's his website.
Mm-hmm.
But he has since passed. So the International Body Talk Association has taken over bodytalksystem.com, and they have tons of courses to learn how to do this, to learn how to do structured intuition. It's called Mindscape, or to have self-care tools that they can use called Access. And it's really opened up the opportunity for someone who not necessarily even wants to be a practitioner of body talk, but
Okay.
wants to learn how to be more intuitive, or
And really
wants
hear their
something
body.
and hear their body on a daily basis. Absolutely. It's spot on with the opportunity to learn for yourself first. And then if you choose to have a profession in that, it gives tools for that too.
So again, online classes.
Online and in person. It depends on where you are. There's a lot of classes in Canada, and there are classes in Utah and California. And so there are local that also have a Zoom component to them so that you can go back to the recording, even if you were there in person. And as well, someone doesn't have to travel to those locations.
Right.
So sometimes the practitioner or the seminar website on that body talk system says whether it's online or local or
Okay.
both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Super helpful. And my final question I asked all my guests is if you could change the world in some way, how would you change it?
It's fairly simple. That definition of love turns into the ability to be curious about yourself and to gain self-love through the spaciousness of uh, just being who you are, and then the curiosity to get to know who you are. And if everybody on the planet were doing that self-care work, it and looking at self-love from a broader perspective, we'd get the inner work, and then you would be giving love to others.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just a natural inclination to want to be curious about other people in a conversation when you know that some aspect of meditation that you had done, you were curious about yourself. So
That's,
that would be what changes the world is love.
yeah, yeah. Beautifully, beautifully put. Thank you so much, Katherine, for joining me today to talk and discuss and learn about BodyTalk. My guest is Katherine Ebacher. Her website is listen to the body talk, all one word, listen to the bodytalk.com. That brings us to the end of this episode of Mystical Messages. To learn more about my work or to book a session with me, please visit hilaryharley.com. If you would like to read my monthly forecast, to check planetary dates and events and cycles, you may find the full transcript for all astrology episodes on my website. I want to mention Three Wise Women. That is an online forum. We meet the first Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m. Please join Kathy Ripley Green, psychic medium of quite some renown, as well as Veronica Drake, who is a psychic intuitive, and me, Hilary Harley, the astrologer, for community conversation and discussion, and find your tribe and have all of your metaphysical questions and exploration adventures pursued and answered. So you can find a link to the Three Wise Women on my website, hilaryharley.com. If you would like to join, it's only $10 per session or $110 for an annual membership. Thank you so much for listening today. Please join me again in 2 weeks when I will bring you my astrology forecast for the month ahead. I wish you many blessings as you journey forward.